America. It's Monday, March the 20th. I'm Rob Finnerty.
And I'm Allison Maloney. It's the first day of spring,
It
too.
is.
That's exciting. It's a good way to start the week, although it doesn't feel like spring.
Not
here
where
in
we
New
are,
York.
although it's
No.
supposed to be 60 tomorrow.
We'll take it. That
I
actually
guess.
will feel like 80 to us because we're so used to the cold weather.
Exactly, yes.
All right, well, good morning, everyone. Here are some of the stories we're following for you today.
We start with the big story in New York City. Former President Donald Trump says that he will be arrested tomorrow as the Office of Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg coordinates with the former president's team as to what that process will look like. Trump would become the first president in U.S. history to be indicted. Former acting U.S. Attorney General Matthew Whitaker will be with us in just a moment to answer our questions.
And plus, Chinese President Xi Jinping lands in Russia for a three-day summit with President Putin as Xi works to cast himself as a potential peacemaker in the Ukraine war.
And today marks 20 years since the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003. Congressman Guy Reschenthaler, a veteran who served in Iraq, will join us later this morning for more. But first, back to the million-dollar question. Will Donald Trump actually be indicted tomorrow in Lower Manhattan?
Yeah, joining us now for the latest is former acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker. Mr. Attorney General, thank you for joining us. So take us through what you expect to happen here. Is Trump going to get arrested this week?
Well, we're going to find out. Obviously, it's good to be with both of you this morning. There's several twists and turns, over the weekend. Obviously, there's been a lot of wild speculation as to whether or not he's going to be indicted. I think, Alvin Bragg, certainly as a Soros-backed ideological left-winger, is, suffering from Trump derangement syndrome. And he has targeted the former president really with a lot of resources, has brought in, other resources from outside of his office to make this case. But it's legally very thin case. And, there's been several legal experts, including myself, that have walked through not only the statute of limitations questions, but also the question of whether or not this could ever be a felony based on the fact that, the DOJ has passed on prosecuting this case. The FEC, Federal Election Commission, has passed on this. The John Edwards case in 2008 was lost based on a theory, and Hillary Clinton at most got a fine for her campaign for substantially similar behavior, arguably with the Fusion GPS dossier. So there's a lot of challenges, and it's going to be very disruptive to our republic. And I'm not sure it's worth pursuing this case, especially as New York City, as you know, is suffering so much from violent crime.
Yeah, great point. As we take a live look at Lower Manhattan, where this will all play out tomorrow, we think. The New York Post writing this morning, quote, Democrats are so blinded by hatred that they can't see that every time they use the heavy hand of the law against former President Trump, they just cement his status as MAGA martyr. Or maybe they're so terrified of running against Ron DeSantis in 2024, they actually want to martyr Trump to ensure that he wins. Mr. Attorney General, what's your read on this?
Well, first of all, that's some next level jujitsu to think that you can, manipulate the American people and the, Republican voters to get the candidate you want. Obviously the left's used to that. They didn't want Bernie Sanders, so they manipulated their process to get Joe Biden. That's not working out very well for our country, as we see almost every day. Now, that being said, I just think you can't use the criminal justice system as an instrument in politics. And if the left is truly doing that and trying to get the outcome they want by either, prosecuting Donald Trump and therefore making him stronger and making him the nominee, I think that will ultimately blow up in their face, because I think Donald Trump has a real good chance of winning in 24.
Yeah.
Mr. Attorney General, what do you make of the timing of this? Last week we were talking about the money from China going to the Biden family. That was all over the news. And now this comes out. Is this suspicious to you at all, the timing?
Of course. And, also don't forget all the bank failures and the challenges in our financial system. This appears to be certainly a wag the dog moment. This case could have been brought in at any time. I think it's so weak that they really don't want to bring it, but this was the time to play this card if they're going to play it at all, because it gets the attention away from Joe Biden and his terrible management, plus, his potential political corruption with him and his family.
Yeah. Can you talk about, by the way, just so theoretically, we could see a mugshot of the former president here. To me, that makes Donald Trump more powerful. This becomes one of the most famous photos, because we're not talking about like a Nick Nolte mugshot here. This is going to be like he'll smile in the picture, and this will be one of the more famous political pictures we'll ever see. Do you think that would happen? Would he be fingerprinted, and would we get a mugshot of the former president?
Yeah, and there could be also, unfortunately, him being handcuffed and walked outside the courthouse. The New York press loves those visuals, and whether it's even though they're not supposed to do it, prosecutors love making that available and just happen to have the cameras set up. So there could be a lot of visuals coming out of this that are iconic in the long term. But the long story short is Donald Trump, I'm sure, he has good lawyers. I know them. They're negotiating if this is going to happen, how to do it professionally and try not to have a circus. And, I just forgot to remind everyone that, political violence on either side is never acceptable. And so, we obviously have our First Amendment rights. We should exercise those, but we should never, devolve into violence.
Yeah, the best way is to just, if you're upset with something, call your congressman, your senator, or take to social media. That's the best way to do that. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy tweeting this out, saying, "Here we go again. The House will be investigating if federal funds are being used." So talk to us about this, because again, this is something that I think the media, especially the left-leaning media, they're going to be all over this, and this actually could actually help President Trump in this election.
Yeah, I mean, the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C., together with the Southern District of New York, certainly need to explain whether or not they're involved in Alvin Bragg's investigation of Donald Trump, whether or not they shared information. The answers can be obtained from Congress, and there's certainly a role. Remember, there's separation of powers not only at the federal level, but also between the states and the federal government. And this is a prime example of where, Madison's design is going to play out. And, there's going to be a lot of judges, both state and federal judges, that are going to weigh in on the law, and I think ultimately, as we spoke at the front end, the law is so weak that this case is going to be based on, if they bring it, that I think there's going to get kicked out of court ultimately.
Okay, take a listen to how they characterized this yesterday morning on Face the Nation.
This is also obviously a huge political story. Senator Lindsey Graham said yesterday the prosecutor in New York, quote, has done more to help Donald Trump get elected president than any single person in America today. Is that how the Trump camp sees it?
Well, Senator Graham is a longtime advisor and friend of former President Trump, and the Trump wing of the Republican Party sees this as a very similar moment to what happened when the FBI raided Mar-a-Lago, that this is going to create a lot of momentum for the former president in the 2024 race.
All right, so Matt, you've endorsed the former president to be president again. You also served as Attorney General, so you know the law very, very well. In your opinion, and we've got just about 30 seconds, does Alvin Bragg have a case here, or is this strictly political?
Yeah, again, he's got a bunch of hurdles to jump over. I think the statute of limitations is the first one. He's either got 2 or 5 years. All this happened 7 years ago. And then you have this whole jump about a federal election law violation. So I think the case is legally weak. And I would say that whether it was a Republican or a Democrat. I think these prosecutors need to have judgment. They use discretion. They need to make their priorities clear, and Alvin Bragg appears to just suffer from Trump derangement syndrome.
Yeah, absolutely. Matthew Whitaker, great to see you. Thanks for breaking that down for us. We appreciate that. So helpful as we try to unpack everything that we learned over the weekend.